Hey y'all, everybody's favorite bumpkin here. I've already cleaned the carburetors on the Noob Edition Ran One Park bike, but I want to give you guys a little bit closer look here at the process and how we separate these parts out, and also how they look before and after whenever they come in and out of the blast cabinet, okay? This is just a old junk carburetor that I had laying about. It came off of a little Honda Trail 70, and this carb had some internal issues where somebody tried to fix it, and honestly, they kind of bodged it up. We're using it as a guinea pig, but the same processes and principles and the same steps, they're going to apply to pretty much any carb job that we're going to do from this point moving forward, okay? Hang out here, guys. It may be a little bit shaky. I'm sorry. I'm having to do this one-handed, but you guys are going to be able to see this as a process from start to finish. All right, let's get started with this. This is a guinea pig carburetor, if you will. This carb was previously replaced on this customer's unit because somebody once upon a time had gone inside there and they got a little too aggressive with their cleaning methods. And the problem is this float seat right here in the main body, I know it's probably a little difficult to see, but the actual float seat where the tip of the float needle rests inside there on that little rubber tip, that was damaged. And I don't know what they did. I don't know if they went rooting around in there with a drill bit or whatever. This thing would not stop oozing fuel no matter what you did to it. And in this instance, it was more cost effective just to replace the carburetor entirely because they had a couple of other small things going on. At the end of the day, it saved the customer money replacing the carburetor rather than trying to recondition this one. But it's a good working example of how everything works with the soda blasting. So what we're going to do here, our main components like the main body and the bowl itself and the petcock assembly and the cap, those are fine by themselves. We're going to go ahead, we're going to have to keep track of this little guy because if you look, there's a bunch of junk and crap down there in that nut that forms the bottom of the fuel chamber on the float bowl, and that's where your fuel filter goes. And on this particular model, the petcock is integrated into the side of the carburetor. It's not mounted on the gas tank. All of our small parts here, from where we got the carb broken down, we're going to put all those in our cleaning basket, and then we're going to put all of this stuff in the blast cabinet. We're going to spray the crap off of it and show you what it looks like raw, the way that it comes out of the cabinet. Now keep in mind, it's going to be a little dusty. The only step after that, which I'm not going to show here, just due to time constraints and the fact that it's a yeah, it's a bit of a rainy morning here on the Florida Gulf Coast, and I really don't feel like getting drowned walking to the house right now. Use your imagination, okay? That choke rod, we're going to leave that out along with that float. We've got a couple of O-rings here. We're going to leave those out. And that little bitty O-ring right there from the idle mixture screw and the idle mixture screw itself. Now, if you look, the actual metering tip on that idle mixture screw, it is very tiny and it's very delicate. Stuff like this, we don't put in the cabinet. We clean that by hand. So we set that over there. The remainder of this stuff, the hardware, the jets, some springs, the float pin, the choke flapper, little retainer plate, the spring, sure, it can all go in there. Let's round all this stuff up. And again, I'm sorry, I'm doing this one-handed. I got the Garth Brooks soundtrack going in the background here, if you guys can hear that. It's, well, it's raining. And it's going to be an interesting ride to work today because I'm going to be soggy by the time I get there. And, Brody, Get out of there. Everybody say hello to Brody the Wonder Mutt. Say hi, Brody. You'll have to forgive Brody. He's not very vocal unless he sees a trash bag blowing around in the breeze. Then he's the baddest damn thing on the face of the planet. But if anybody actually broke into the house here, you know, he'd be like, give me a belly rub and I'll show you where all the good shit is in the back.
Will you be my friend? Will you be my friend? Will you be my friend?
So we take that, close it up, and please bear with me. This is a little fiddly doing this one-handed. We're going to take our parts basket, and we're taking our big chunks, and we're going to throw them in the cabinet, and we're going to blast them. I'm going to show you what they look like whenever we get done. Okay, guys, the audio on this part of the video ended up being total trash. So I had to dump all that, and I'm going to do a voiceover here. That way I can kind of talk y'all through the steps that I'm taking and why I do them that way. That way you get a better understanding of how the process works and how to plow through it from point A to point Z. So basically, just turn on the air, turn on the dust collector, shove your hands in some really bad fitting rubber gloves. It's going to make your arms and your hands sweat like crazy, like somebody locked you into a tanning bed. Then you wipe off the window. That way you can see what you're doing, even though it's going to go right back to the same way it was in about 12 seconds. Yeah, such is life. But anyway, what I prefer to do is I like to do all the exterior surfaces of the main body, float bowl, things like that, any brackets, any mounting points. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way. That way we can, you know, make the outside of it pretty. We can make sure that everything there is done to our satisfaction. And then at the end of it all, the important stuff we can spend a little bit more time on, make sure we've got good flow throughout all the air bleeds, all the fuel passages, the idle mixture screw passages, you know, choke passages, etc., etc. Now, what I'm doing right here, again, I'm just knocking the stuff off the outside of this carburetor. And right here, I had to make a slight adjustment to my blaster because it was being a little bit difficult. And like I said, it's a new rig. It's something I'm still working the finer points out of. So back at it, we're knocking the junk and the funk off the outside of the carburetor body. And if you notice, whenever the screen gets kind of cloudy, that's when I'm moving media through my blaster. Whenever it clears out, that's when I've got a blockage. Now, I like to blast the entrance to the carb mouth, not just the air bleeds, but also the throat and the bore of the carburetor, because usually you'll pick up a little bit of a fuel varnish if you've got a bike that had an air filter that rotted, kind of like in the Ramblin' Park bike that we're doing right now. A lot of those chunks of air filter foam or paper or whatever, they'll get pulled in there and it'll collect in there. So you want to make sure you get all that junk out of there. Now, the cool thing about using dry soda as a blasting medium is it's very gentle, but it's a very effective cleaner because, like I'm pointing to in the video right there, you can blow through all those passages with impunity, but you don't have to worry about it affecting any kind of tight tolerance or any kind of gasket surface or a precision fit surface. Obviously, unless you hold it in the one single spot for about 30 minutes, then you might have a problem. But with this, it's kind of like air-powered magic eraser, if you will, because wherever you point it and pull the trigger, if it's got something that's staining the aluminum or if it's deposits that are built up, varnish, corrosion, rust, whatever, it's going to knock it off of there. So we go around the base of the carburetor, around where the float bowl gasket seats, just to make sure that's smooth as a final step. And then we pick up our small parts. Now that little guy right there is that nut from the fuel filter housing. And you guys remember all the junk that I showed you earlier that was packed into the bottom of that thing? We're going to make sure we get all that knocked out right quick and proper, because any of that stuff that's left in there, whenever it has fuel running in on it, it can loosen that up again and it can get sucked back into the carburetor that you just got done cleaning. So you want to look at things from a big picture standpoint. You want to make sure that you got all of your bases covered. Now, the threads on that won't be damaged. The threads inside the housing where it screws up into, they won't be damaged. Again, unless you hold it in the same spot for an excruciatingly long period of time.
Now, again, we're doing the outside of the bowl just for aesthetics and to clean all the grease and funk off of it, because that keeps you from cross-contaminating your new carburetor that's nice, clean, and shiny on the inside. If you've got a bunch of junk and funk on the outside that's going to transfer off to your hands or to your workspace or your tools, if you're going to do the job, do the whole job. And you can just follow around in the groove in the carb body where the float bowl O-ring sets, and any kind of deposit or oxidization that builds up in there, like it typically does, the soda knocks all that stuff out. Now, if you've got one that's built up extremely bad, you may still have to take a pick and do a little bit of scraping, but that's going to get 95% of it out of there. Now, down in the bottom of the bowl itself, you're probably going to see some pitting that you're just never going to get rid of, especially on an older bike. Don't worry about it. As long as it's functionally clean, the rest of it's not going to matter because nobody's going to see it anyway. Now, that petcock, it attaches directly to the float bowl of the carburetor, and I had to be a little gentle with that because that petcock, it doesn't come apart. It's actually riveted together from Honda, and the only way that you can disassemble it is to drill the heads off the rivets. Now, we got our small parts on our cleaner basket here, and I figured out with this, the best way to get good agitation but still concentrate your blast in one area is to kind of tip it up a little bit and either shoot from the top down at an angle or from the bottom up. That way you got gravity working in your favor, and as that stuff bounces around inside there, it still comes back down to the bottom to where it's in the airflow that's carrying the soda that's doing all the cleaning. Right there, what that does is that lets everything tumble around, and it does a really, really good job of, getting all the surfaces covered and cleaned. Now all we got to do is pull everything out of the blaster, dust it off with a little compressed air, rinse it out with some hot water, and then we're good to go.
And here we have it, folks. Let me show you this stuff, okay? Now keep in mind, I haven't rinsed any of this off in the sink or anything yet. This is just straight out of the cabinet with a quick blast of compressed air just to knock off the excess soda. Now you still need to rinse it out with hot water just to liquefy any remaining traces of soda that may be there, flush it out. That way you can make sure you don't have something hanging around that may potentially come around and bite you in the backside. But let me show you this stuff. See? Pretty. And more importantly, it's clean. Now you're going to see some surface imperfections here. There's some pitting and some staining here. Now, eventually, if I wanted to stick with it, if I was going for a restoration level of clean, I could make that go away as well. It wasn't warranted in this case, and it's not warranted in 99% of all repairs. Now that level of cleaning is strictly for restoration purposes or custom builds, if you want something to be a trailer queen, show queen, whatever you want to call it. But if you look down close in there, see, we don't have any residue left in the fuel filter chamber, anything like that. There's that pitting I was talking about and a little bit of staining. But you notice there's a little bit of soda residue left on there. That's why I encourage people to rinse this stuff off in hot water, even though, honestly, compressed air takes 99.9% of all of it out of the equation. It's always good to run water through it just as a fail-safe. But there is nothing crusty, funky floating around in there that's going to break loose and stop anything up later on down the road. Same for our main body here. That's pretty. Now you can see the different colors on this needle seat right here. Get in a little closer there where you can see. That's where I missed a little bit of it with the blast. Not a big deal, but then again, this is just a example carburetor. This isn't something that's going to work on a bike because it's damaged. It's a paperweight nowadays. You can see here inside all the buildup, all the residue, it's all gone. And there's no way that I can get you down inside these little holes right here, but I can assure you they're just as clean as the rest of this. As far as the outside of it goes, nice, clean, pretty, shiny. Now this carb wasn't terribly bad on the outside from visual appearances, but, still, that's a pretty strong statement for how well this stuff cleans and how effective it is. Now this is the one problem area. Remember that little fuel sediment bowl that went on the bottom of our float bowl here that contained the filter? It had a bunch of junk and crap in the bottom of it. That is gone, man. Let me see if I can get that in a little bit better focus for you. See? Nothing left. Just bright, clean aluminum. And we don't have to worry about any contaminants floating around in there that's going to stop up the carburetor after we get done. So let's see what our little stuff came out looking like. Now, I left all this stuff in the basket, and I just gave the whole basket a shot of compressed air just to knock off the excess soda. So let's see what we got. There we go. Yeah. Nice. It's pretty. It's clean. Picked up quite a bit of shine on the plating. Now, there's still a little bit left on that choke bracket, but I'm not going to get too spun up over that because we still need to blow through our jets just to make sure all the orifices are clean and clear, emulsion tubes, air bleeds, all that. That's just good practice. But I think the results pretty much speak for themselves there, and hey, that looks a whole lot better than what it did 10 minutes ago. So anyway, just to wrap it up, that's how I clean carbs, and that's the level of clean that my carbs get on the inside and outside. Can I go further with it on the outside from a visual standpoint? Sure can, but I'm worried about making a bike run correctly. If I'm at a point where I'm making a bike look pretty for a restoration or a custom job, something like that, that's when we go that extra step. These parts here, perfectly serviceable the way they are, and it'll run just fine. Just to kind of wrap things up, I got to go put on the trash bag because my alarm went off a few minutes ago when I was wrapping up this video. I got to get my butt to work, okay? Till next trip, I love y'all. Look forward to hanging out with you in the comments either here on the tubes or over on the Patreon, whichever you guys prefer. Also, just a heads up, okay? There may be, maybe, something on the forefront here. I'm keeping this kind of close to the vest, but if we can make this happen, it's going to be really, really cool, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. Till next time, I love y'all. I'll catch you on the flip side.